A single act of prejudice on an airplane costs a corporation more than a PR nightmare. It costs them $4 billion. When Dr. Serafina James, CEO of one of the world's most powerful tech firms, was targeted by a flight attendant and forcibly removed from her flight by security, the airline thought they were just handling a disruptive passenger. They didn't know they had just humiliated their single most important investor. They didn't know she was on her way to sign a deal that included them. And they didn't know that by the time her new private jet landed, she would have already pulled $4 billion in funding, sending their company into a death spiral. This isn't a story about inconvenience. It's about karma delivered at the speed of finance. The Velocity Airlines first-class lounge at JFK was a sea of muted blues and polite whispers, a carefully constructed oasis against the chaos of Terminal 4. Dr. Serafina James, CEO of Kratos Innovations, fit the scene perfectly, yet seemed entirely separate from it. Dressed in a dark grey, immaculately tailored Loro Piana tracksuit and noise-cancelling headphones, she was an island of focused intensity. Her laptop and 2 phones were spread across the marble-topped table, her fingers a blur as she finalized the preliminary injunctions for the Global Sky Consortium. This wasn't a vacation, it was the culmination of 2 years of work. The Global Sky deal was a $40 billion high-speed logistics network poised to revolutionize global shipping. Kratos Innovations was the lead investor, and her $4 billion tranche was the keystone holding the entire arch together. Velocity Airlines, the very airline she was currently flying, was a key partner, set to receive a massive contract to integrate their air cargo division with the new automated network. Her flight, VA 815 to Zurich, was the final step. The 9 a.m. summit tomorrow was a formality, a press and signatures event. The real work was done. Flight 815, first class, now boarding from Gate 22, a voice cooed over the speaker. Serafina methodically packed her gear. Her movements were economical and precise. She gathered her 2 carry-on bags. One, a sleek, hard-shell aluminum briefcase containing her secure laptop. The other, a soft-sided designer duffel for the 10-hour flight. She walked to the gate, her boarding pass glowing on her phone. The gate agent barely looked up, scanned it, and waved her through. She stepped onto the plane and into the quiet sanctum of the first-class cabin. Her suite, 1A, was at the very front. As she stepped in, the lead flight attendant, a woman in her late 50s with a name tag reading Brenda and a helmet of sprayed blonde hair, gave her a smile that didn't remotely touch her eyes. "Welcome," Brenda said, her voice a saccharine-sweet drawl. "Good evening," Serafina replied, moving to place her briefcase in the small closet provided. "Oh, just a moment, honey," Brenda said, stepping in front of her. "These suites have very limited storage. Are you sure you're in the right cabin?" Serafina paused. The word honey hung in the air, a small, sticky grenade. She looked at Brenda, then at her seat number, then back to Brenda. "I'm sure," she said, her voice even. 1A. "Well, let me just see that," Brenda said, holding her hand out for the boarding pass. Serafina, already holding her phone, showed her the screen. Brenda squinted at it, her skepticism obvious. Well, all right, but that second bag won't fit." Serafina looked at her duffel. "It's standard-sized. It should fit in the overhead." "Our overheads are very small up here," Brenda said, already shaking her head. "You'll have to check it." "I'd prefer not to. It has my medications and work documents. I can place it under the ottoman," Serafina offered. "That's against FAA regulations," Brenda snapped, her voice losing its sweetness. "It's clear you don't fly first class often. The rules are different here. We can't have clutter." This was, Serafina noted, a lie. She flew this exact route twice a month. But she didn't argue. Fine. If it doesn't fit, please gate check it for me. We'll see if we have time, Brenda huffed, turning away to greet the next passenger with a blindingly fake smile. Serafina ignored the jab. She slid her aluminum briefcase into its designated spot, where it fit perfectly. She then lifted her duffel bag to the overhead bin. As she suspected, it was half empty, and the bag fit with inches to spare. She closed the bin door with a soft click. She settled into her suite, pulling out her tablet to review the final press release for the deal. A man, red-faced and loud on his phone, lumbered into seat 2B across the aisle. "No, you tell them I'm not paying for the change. I'm Chad Miller. I'm Diamond Medallion. They know who I am." Serafina muted him out and focused on her work. A few minutes later, Brenda returned. She stopped dead in front of Serafina's suite, her eyes fixed on the closed overhead bin. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. "Did you put that bag up there?" Serafina looked up from her tablet. "Yes, it fit." "I told you that bag needed to be checked," Brenda said, her voice rising. "And I told you it would fit. It did." "It's not a problem," Serafina said calmly. "It is a problem," Brenda insisted. "You closing it doesn't mean it's safe. I need to inspect it." She yanked the bin open. The bag sat innocently inside. "It's fine," Serafina said, a cold thread of annoyance entering her voice. "You are not to touch the overhead bins without my permission," Brenda said, her face flushing. "You have to follow crew instructions." "I followed the instruction to board," Serafina said, her patience evaporating. "I'm a passenger, not a child. The bag fits. Please close the bin. We're delaying takeoff." From across the aisle, Chad Miller lowered his phone. "Hey, listen to the lady, sweetheart. She's just doing her job. Don't make a scene." Serafina's gaze, which had frozen hostile governments and brought cocky venture capitalists to their knees, shifted to Chad. He visibly flinched. "This is not your concern," she said. Brenda, however, saw an ally. "See? You're upsetting the other passengers. You are being hostile." "I am sitting," Serafina said, gesturing to her seat. "I am not being hostile. I am being precise. Your behavior, however, is unprofessional. Close the bin." Brenda's eyes narrowed into slits. "No, I am the lead attendant on this flight, and I am deeming that bag unsafe. Give it to me. I'm checking it." "You will not," Serafina said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, but gaining a dangerous, metallic edge. "You will not touch my property. The bag is compliant. We are done with this conversation." "Oh, we are far from done," Brenda hissed. She turned on her heel and marched toward the cockpit. A few minutes later, Brenda returned, a smirk playing on her lips. She didn't look at Serafina. Instead, she began her pre-flight checks, offering champagne to Mr. Miller and pointedly ignoring 1A. Serafina put her headphones back on, assuming the matter was settled. She was wrong. The cockpit door opened, and the captain, a tall man with silver hair named Captain Matthews, stepped out. He walked directly to 1A. "Ma'am," he said, not unkindly. Serafina removed her headphones. "Captain, my lead attendant, Brenda, tells me you're refusing to follow safety instructions regarding your carry-on." "Brenda is mistaken," Serafina said clearly. "My bag fits the overhead compartment. It is well within the size limits. Brenda appears to have a personal issue with me storing it." "That's not true." Brenda materialized at the captain's elbow. "She was aggressive. She called me unprofessional. And she threatened me." This was a new, blatant lie. Serafina's eyes widened slightly. "Captain, I did not. I am sitting here, trying to prepare for a 10-hour flight. I simply placed my compliant bag in the bin. She's lying, Chad Miller yelled from his seat. I saw it. She's one of those people, trying to get something for free, causing a scene. Just kick her off. Captain Matthews looked torn. He had a hysterical flight attendant, a loud-mouthed, diamond medallion passenger, and a black woman in a tracksuit, sitting calmly in the most expensive seat on the plane. He made the calculation of least resistance. "Ma'am, I can't have a disturbance before we even take off," he said. "This is a simple request. Just let her check the bag. We'll put a fragile tag on it." Serafina looked at him, her disappointment palpable. "Captain, this is no longer about the bag. It's about your attendant's behavior. She has singled me out since I boarded. She questioned my seat. She called me honey. She is lying about my conduct. And you are indulging her." Just then, a passenger from the back of the cabin, a young man in a hoodie, walked past. He was holding his phone, seemingly texting, but the camera lens was clearly pointed at the unfolding drama. Brenda didn't notice. "You see?" Brenda shrieked. "She's accusing me. She's unstable. I don't feel safe with her on my flight." This was the magic word. I don't feel safe. The one phrase that gave cabin crew absolute power. Captain Matthews's face hardened. "Ma'am, if my crew doesn't feel safe, I have a problem. I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you going to deplane voluntarily, or do I have to call security?" Serafina stared at him. "You are going to call security on me for sitting in my seat, because your flight attendant is on a power trip." "That's it," Brenda said, folding her arms. "Me or her, Captain." The captain sighed. He turned and spoke into his radio. "Gate, this is the captain. I need airport security at the jet bridge. We have a non-compliant passenger for removal." The entire cabin, which had been pretending not to watch, went silent. The only sound was Chad Miller's slow, satisfied chuckle. Serafina James, the woman who controlled a $100 billion portfolio, who spoke at Davos and advised presidents, sat back in her seat. She didn't shout, she didn't cry. A glacial calm settled over her. She picked up her phone, opened an app, and typed a single curt message to her chief of staff. "Gulfstream, JFK to Zurich now." Then she looked at the captain. "You are making a mistake that will be studied in business schools for the next 50 years. The captain, unnerved by her sudden stillness, just shook his head. "Save the drama, ma'am. Security will be here in a moment." "I'm sure they will," Serafina said. She slowly gathered her tablet, slid it into her pocket, and picked up her phone. She didn't wait for security. She stood up, grabbed her briefcase from the closet, and, with the entire cabin staring, began to walk toward the door. But as she reached the aisle, Brenda, emboldened, stepped in her path. "And your other bag," she sneered, pointing at the overhead bin. Serafina looked at the bin, then back at Brenda. "That bag stays. Consider it a tip." She walked past the stunned flight attendant and off the jet bridge just as 2 Port Authority officers were walking on. "Ma'am, we got a call about her," one of them started. "I'm the one," Serafina said, not breaking her stride. "I'm deplaning. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a plane to catch." She walked past them, head held high, leaving a stunned silence and the seeds of a $4 billion catastrophe in her wake. Serafina strode through the terminal, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm of pure, weaponized fury. The 2 officers, Ryan and Cole, were flanking her, slightly confused. "So, you're not being disruptive?" Officer Ryan asked, jogging slightly to keep up. "Officer, I'm the CEO of a company that employs 50,000 people. I don't have time to be disruptive," Serafina said, without slowing. I was, however, the target of a deeply prejudiced flight attendant. But I have a much more important flight to catch. My own. She was already on the phone with her assistant. Anna, is the Gulfstream G700 ready? Good. File the flight plan. I'll be at the private hangar in 20 minutes. And get David, her CFO, and the legal team on a conference call. Now. She hung up as a man in a rumpled Velocity Airline suit ran up to her. He had a Marcus Thorne, VP Customer Relations badge pinned to his lapel. Dr. James, please, he panted. The Port Authority officers, seeing an airline representative, stepped back. I'm Marcus Thorne. I understand there was a misunderstanding on Flight 815. Serafina stopped and turned to him. The full, unfiltered power of her gaze hit him like a physical blow. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. A misunderstanding is when you're given sparkling water instead of still. What just happened was a calculated, bigoted, and profoundly stupid act of public humiliation. Your employee, Brenda, lied. Your captain, Matthews, enabled her. And your diamond medallion passenger, Chad Miller, provided the background chorus. Thorne, who had been on site for a different PR issue, was now in a full-blown panic. He had received a one-line text from the gate agent. Captain removed 1A. It's a mess. He hadn't known who 1A was until he looked at the manifest. The name Dr. Serafina James was flagged in their system with a 5-star Kratos Consortium alert. He was supposed to be greeting her, not managing her removal. Dr. James, please, he pleaded, spreading his hands. Brenda. She's an older employee. Sometimes she... Look, we can get you back on. The captain just called down. He realizes he might have been hasty. We'll get your bag. We can buy Brenda a retirement package. Please, let's just smooth this over. Smooth this over. Serafina repeated the phrase as if it were a piece of rotten fruit. Mr. Thorne, your airline is a key partner in the Global Sky Consortium. My company, Kratos Innovations, is the lead investor. I was flying to Zurich to sign the final paperwork that guarantees Velocity Airlines a $1.2 billion contract as part git of that deal, a deal that my $4 billion investment makes possible. Marcus Thorne's face went from pale to a ghastly, waxy white. He looked like he was going to be sick. The Kratos... Kratos, you're Dr. James, from Kratos. You didn't know, Serafina stated. It wasn't a question. You thought I was just some random woman in a tracksuit you could push around. You and your crew assumed I didn't belong. No, I didn't connect. Connect this, Serafina said, her voice like steel. She held up her phone. The conference call with her legal team was connected. Mr. Thorne, you need to listen very carefully. As of 9:32 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Kratos Innovations is invoking Clause 12B of the Global Sky Consortium Agreement, the Partner Conduct and Reputational Harm Clause. Your airline, by identifying the CEO of the lead investment firm as a security threat and ejecting me from a flight based on false testimony from your employee, has done irreparable harm to the Kratos brand and has demonstrated foundational instability in corporate governance. Thorne was vibrating. Dr. James, $4 billion. You can't. It's the whole project. Oh, I can, Serafina said. David, she said into her phone. Are you on? A crisp British voice answered. I'm here, Sarah. Legal is on too. Are you serious? Deadly. I want the full press release drafted. Kratos Innovations reevaluates 4B Global Sky Partnership, citing foundational instability in Velocity Airlines. I want it to hit the wires at 8 a.m. 1 hour before the market opens. David, I want you to short sell every share of Velocity stock we hold. Then, I want you to start proceedings to have them removed from the consortium entirely and replaced. I'm sure Apex Logistics would love the $1.2 billion contract. They can actually get their people to a meeting. Sarah, this will bankrupt them, David said quietly. Yes, Serafina replied, her eyes never leaving Thorne's horrified face. That is the point. Please, Thorne whimpered. It was a pathetic sound. Dr. James, it was Brenda. Fire her. I'll fire her myself. Right now. I'll fire the captain. I'll give you free flights for life. You think this is about free flights? Serafina asked. The contempt in her voice was absolute. I just bought my own G700. Mr. Thorne, your airline had a choice. It could have chosen professionalism. It could have chosen decency. It chose bigotry and incompetence. And now it must choose to face the consequences. She turned and began walking again. But my job, Thorne shouted after her, his voice cracking. This will ruin me. Serafina stopped one last time, looking at him over her shoulder. You should have thought of that before you decided my dignity was worth less than your convenience. She didn't. She walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the terminal, a digital ghost already haunting the ruins of his career. While Serafina was climbing to 40,000 feet in the silent pearl-white cabin of her Gulfstream, Flight VA-815 was a pressure cooker of resentment and dawning horror. The moment Serafina deplaned, the young man in the hoodie who had been filming quietly uploaded his video. It was 45 seconds long. It didn't capture the beginning, but it captured the most damning part. It showed Brenda shrieking, "She's unstable, I don't feel safe." It showed Chad Miller yelling, "Just kick her off." It showed Captain Matthews, his face grim, saying, "I have to call security." And it showed Serafina, sitting perfectly still, hands in her lap, the picture of calm, saying, "You are making a mistake that will be studied in business schools." He posted it to TikTok and Twitter, now X, with a simple caption. Velocity Airlines flight attendant. Ot Velocity Air has a meltdown and kicks a calm black woman out of first class for no reason. Passenger in 2B joined in. Gross. What Velocity Airlines, Ot JFK, Ot racism in the air. By the time VA-8115 was over the Atlantic, the video had 1 million views. By the time they were 3 hours from Zurich, it had 20 million. On the plane, however, they were in a bubble. Brenda, triumphant, was preening. She regaled the other flight attendants in the galley with her heroic story of handling a disruptive, aggressive passenger. "You have to be firm with those types," she said, pouring herself a coffee. She thought she could just waltz in here and, well, she found out. Chad Miller, having finished his 3rd glass of champagne, felt like a hero. He had helped. He had defended the crew. He was a diamond medallion after all. He was part of the team. He made a mental note to write a glowing review for Brenda and a complaint about the woman in 1A. Back in the real world, the internet had done its work. Serafina James was not a hard person to identify. She was one of the most recognizable black women in finance and tech. "That's Dr. Serafina James," one comment read. "She's the CEO of Kratos Innovations." Wait, isn't Velocity Airlines a partner on her new Global Sky project? Oh, my God, that flight attendant didn't just kick off a passenger, she kicked off the passenger. The video was cross-referenced with news articles about the Global Sky deal. Amateur sleuths identified Chad Miller by the obnoxious Miller Capital logo on his laptop bag, which he had placed on the empty seat next to him. Kratos Innovations' legal team, acting on Serafina's orders, was not idle. They used the video, which was now public evidence, as an addendum to their official notice of breach of contract, sending it directly to the entire Velocity Airlines board of directors and the Global Sky Consortium partners. The press release that Serafina had dictated was finalized, but her legal team added a single brutal line. This decision was reached after Velocity Airlines staff, in a clear display of racial bias, forcibly and falsely removed our CEO, Dr. Serafina James, from a flight she was taking to finalize the partnership. They didn't just accuse, they provided the receipts. The video was attached. The board meeting for Velocity Airlines was convened at 3 a.m. It was not a meeting. It was a digital execution. The CEO, a man named Robert Vance, was screaming so loud his audio was clipping. "Someone find Thorne! Where is Thorne? He was supposed to meet her." Marcus Thorne was, at that moment, in his office, vomiting into his wastebasket, having just seen the viral video and the Kratos legal brief. The pre-market trading began at 4 a.m. By 8:01 a.m., when Serafina's press release hit the Bloomberg and Reuters terminals, the bottom fell out. Velocity's stock, Vele, was in a freefall. It didn't just drop, it plummeted. The $4 billion pullout from Kratos triggered a catastrophic loss of confidence. The Global Sky deal was seen as Velocity's only path back to profitability after the pandemic. Without it, they were insolvent. In 9 minutes, Velocity Airlines lost 60% of its total market capitalization, billions, wiped out by a single, prejudiced flight attendant, and a captain who couldn't be bothered to lead. On the Gulf Stream, Serafina's CFO, David, sent her a single message. "Sarah, it's done. They're hollowed out. Stock is halted. They've lost, well, everything." Serafina, who had been napping, opened her eyes. She read the message, took a sip of her espresso, and replied, "Good. Tell the pilots to prepare for landing. I have a summit to attend." Flight VA-8015 landed in Zurich with a smooth, professional touchdown that belied the corporate chaos it had unleashed. The 10-hour flight had been blissfully ignorant. Brenda Stokes, having reapplied her lipstick, stood at the door, ready to bid her passengers farewell. "Goodbye, Mr. Miller. Thank you for flying Velocity," she said sweetly to her co-conspirator. "My pleasure, Brenda. You handled that situation wonderfully," he said, loud enough for others to hear. As they stepped off the jet bridge, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't the calm, quiet greeting of a Swiss morning. 2 stern-faced Velocity Airlines executives, the Zurich station managers, were waiting, flanked by airport police. "Brenda Stokes?" one of the executives said, his voice flat. "Yes?" she said, preening. "Here for my report?" "No. You are to surrender your airline credentials and your passport. You are suspended, pending termination, effective immediately. The police will escort you to a secure room to await a flight back to New York. In economy." Brenda's smile froze and shattered. "What? What are you talking about? It was the passenger. She was aggressive." The executive held up his phone, playing the video, which was now plastered all over the BBC. "This video? The one where you lie about a passenger who is sitting calmly? The one where you claim to feel unsafe?" Brenda's face went white. That's out of context." $4 billion out of context, Brenda. You've bankrupted the company. Get her out of here." The police stepped forward, and Brenda, for the first time, looked truly terrified. Chad Miller, who had been watching, snorted. "Serves her right, honestly. Overreacting." He then turned to the other executive. "Now, about my baggage." "Mr. Chad Miller?" the executive said, his eyes like ice chips. "Yes. Diamond medallion," Chad said proudly. "Not anymore. Your status has been revoked. Your account is terminated." "And this," he handed Chad a thick envelope, "is a formal notice from Kratos Innovations. It seems your firm, Miller Capital, has 100% of its assets managed through Kratos's private wealth division. Or rather, it did. They are terminating their relationship with you, effective immediately, for conduct unbecoming and defamatory actions against their COO. Chad stared at the letter. What? She was being... The woman you told them to kick off was Dr. Serafina James, the executive said, enjoying this one small part of his horrible day. You yelled at the woman who holds your entire financial portfolio. Your firm has been blacklisted. You're ruined, Mr. Miller. Have a nice day in Zurich. Chad Miller's legs gave out. He sat down hard on his Miller Capital laptop bag and stared into the middle distance, a man who had just realized he'd personally set fire to his own life's work. Meanwhile, an hour earlier, Serafina James had landed at the private terminal. She was met not by chaos, but by a sleek black Mercedes and Robert Hale, the CEO of the Global Sky Consortium himself. "Sarah," he said, opening the door for her. I have no words. I saw the video. I saw the press release. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Robert," she said, sliding in. "But Velocity is not. They're done," Robert said grimly. "They're filing for Chapter 11. The board just resigned. You did it." "They did it to themselves," Serafina corrected. "Now let's talk about our logistics partner. I have a replacement in mind. Apex Logistics. They're smaller, but they're hungrier, and their CEO knows how to answer a damn email." "Apex?" Robert said, intrigued. "They're a good company, but they can't handle the $1.2 billion contract alone." "They won't be," Serafina said, opening her tablet. That was the old plan. The new plan is better. We're rerouting the $4 billion. We're not just investing in air cargo. We're buying Apex, and we're also acquiring the hyper-rail startup we were looking at. We're going to build our own network. We'll bypass the legacy airlines completely. Why partner with dinosaurs when you can build a mammal? Robert Hale was stunned. She hadn't just pulled her funding. She had already reinvested it. She hadn't just reacted to a problem. She had used the problem to create an entirely new, more profitable solution. "Sarah, you're a killer," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. Serafina looked up from her tablet. "Robert," she said, "I'm a CEO. It's my job to see an opportunity and take it. Velocity Airlines just gave me a $4 billion opportunity. Now let's go to the summit and tell them the good news." The fallout wasn't confined to the Zurich airport and the stock market. It was a shockwave that flattened everyone who had stood in Serafina's way. Marcus Thorne. The VP of Customer Relations was the first to fall. He was fired via a one-sentence email before the market opened. But that was just the beginning. The Kratos lawsuit named him personally. It wasn't for money. Kratos didn't need it. It was for gross negligence and enabling a discriminatory corporate environment. He was blacklisted. No airline, no logistics company, no corporation that ever wanted to do business with Kratos or any of its partners, which was, essentially, everyone, would touch him. The viral video of Serafina walking away from him as he begged became a what-not-to-do meme in HR circles. He lost his job, his reputation, and his six-figure salary, all because he dismissed a woman in a tracksuit. Captain Matthews. The captain, who had prioritized his flight attendant's feelings over a passenger's rights, landed in Zurich to find his career over. The FAA and the pilots' union both launched investigations. The video proved Serafina was calm. His report, which he'd filed mid-flight, claimed she was agitated and verbally abusive. The discrepancy was a fatal, career-ending lie. He was grounded, His license was suspended, and he was fired for falsifying a safety report and demonstrating a catastrophic lapse in judgment. He, who had the ultimate authority, had abdicated it to a bully, and in doing so had cost 10,000 people their jobs. Chad Miller. His ruin was more personal, and perhaps more complete. Kratos pulling his portfolio was just the start. His firm, Miller Capital, was a one-man shop that existed only because Kratos allowed him to trade on their platform. The blacklisting was total. His clients, learning what he had done, fled. The video of him yelling, "Just kick her off," was sent to his wife, his country club, and his children's private school. He was expelled from the club. His wife, humiliated and facing a sudden financial apocalypse, filed for divorce. He had entered the airport a diamond medallion blowhard. He left Zurich a pariah, forced to fly economy home on a budget airline, his Miller Capital bag now a symbol of his own stupidity. Brenda Stokes. Brenda's fate was the most direct. She was fired, of course, but the internet was not done with her. She was the face of the scandal. Her name, her picture, her past, incidents, which, it turned in, were numerous, were plastered everywhere. She was the new Karen of the skies. She couldn't leave her house without being recognized and filmed. She tried to sue the airline for wrongful termination, but the video was a perfect defense. No airline would ever hire her again. She lost her pension, as the company was bankrupt, her flight benefits, and her identity. She had built her entire sense of self-worth on the tiny sliver of power she had on that plane, and when she used it to humiliate a woman she felt was less than, she set a fire that consumed her entire life. Velocity Airlines. The company itself ceased to exist. The Chapter 11 filing was a formality. With no lead investor for the Global Sky deal and their reputation shattered beyond repair, no one would step in. No bailout was coming. Their stock was delisted. Their planes were repossessed by creditors. Their routes were auctioned off. The 10,000 employees, from pilots to gate agents to baggage handlers, lost their jobs. An entire legacy airline, a giant of the skies, was brought to its knees and dismantled, all because a single employee couldn't check her own prejudice at the gate. 6 months. In the grand, sweeping arc of corporate history, 6 months is the blink of an eye. It's a single fiscal quarter, a rounding error in a 5-year plan. For Serafina James, it was the precise amount of time needed to bury a titan and birth a new one. The setting for this rebirth was not a sterile boardroom or a glittering Zurich summit. It was the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the Nevada desert, a place where the American dream had once come to build impossible cities. Today, it was the site of the Kratos Apex New Horizon proving ground. A sleek, silver-white pod, looking more like a spacecraft than a train, sat on a single, gleaming magnetic track that stretched to the vanishing point. This was the hyperrail, the centerpiece of Serafina's new $20 billion logistics empire. The $4 billion she had ripped from Velocity Airlines had been the seed, but the sheer, audacious brilliance of the move, bypassing the legacy partners entirely, had attracted a tidal wave of new investment. A temporary amphitheater had been erected, filled with the global press, senators, investors, and the entire leadership of the Global Sky Consortium. They were all here to watch the future launch. Serafina, dressed not in a tracksuit, but in a sharp, cobalt blue Armani suit that mirrored the desert sky, was walking from her private operations tent to the main stage. Her assistant, Anna, flanked her, handing her a data slate. Forbes, Reuters, and Bloomberg are all running live feeds, Anna said, her voice crisp. Robert Hale is on stage, warming them up. Good, Serafina said, not looking at the slate. Her eyes were on the pod. And the Phoenix report? Finalized this morning, Doctor, Anna replied. The last hiring tranche was approved. Of the 10,000 former Velocity employees who were laid off, we've completed our review. 3,112 have been offered positions with the Kratos Apex Group. The other 7,000? HR reports flagged them as legacy-minded. That's the polite term for incompetent, prejudiced, or too lazy to retrain. The ones who just coasted. They've been filtered out of our ecosystem. Good, Serafina said again. We waste nothing, especially not talent. As if summoned by her words, a man in a crisp, new Kratos Apex supervisor's uniform stepped into her path, his hat in his hands. He was in his late 40s, his face etched with nervousness. Dr. James. Ma'am? Anna tensed, ready to intercept, but Serafina held up a hand. Yes? My name is Michael Croft, ma'am. I just had to. I'm the new Western Region Logistics Manager for the Hyperrail. Serafina looked at him, her gaze analytical, but not unkind. Mr. Croft. He swallowed, his story tumbling out. I was at Velocity, ma'am, for 20 years. I was in the cargo division. When it went under, I lost everything. My pension, my health care, my kids' college fund. I have a daughter at NYU. I thought my life was over. He took a shaky breath. Then, Kratos posted the Phoenix program, a hiring initiative for qualified, non-culpable ex-Velocity staff. I thought it was a PR stunt, but I applied. The interview, it wasn't about loyalty. It wasn't about who I knew. They asked me how to solve a 3-point logistics bottleneck between LA and Vegas. They asked me to do the work. And you did, Serafina concluded. Yes, ma'am. I designed the routing schematic they're testing today. He pointed toward the gleaming pod. They hired me. They reinstated my pensionable service years. You paid my daughter's tuition as a signing bonus. Ma'am, thank you. You didn't just build a new company. You saved my family. Tears welled in the man's eyes. Serafina watched him for a long moment, the noise of the crowd and the wind a distant hum. The humiliation in that first-class cabin felt a lifetime away. This was the other side of that fury. This was the point of it. Mr. Croft, she said, her voice softening just a fraction. Velocity failed because it protected the wrong people. It valued the comfort of a bigoted flight attendant over the competence of its engineers. That is a fatal business model. We don't have that model. You were not given a job. You earned it. Your talent was being wasted. We don't waste talent. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe you have a pod to launch. Yes, ma'am, he said, snapping to attention, his face transformed with a new, fierce pride. He put his hat on and strode off toward the control tower. Serafina turned to Anna. That man is the future. Brenda Stokes and Chad Miller are the past. Her mind, a high-speed processor, briefly accessed the past file. Where were they? She had, of course, received the reports. Brenda Stokes was a pathetic, cautionary tale. She had been fired and blacklisted. She'd tried to sue, claiming emotional distress and ageism. The video of her lying had seen the case thrown out of court. Her union had abandoned her. She was last seen in a Daily Mail article, ranting to a reporter from her porch, the same bitter, entitled anger in her eyes. She was a pariah, unemployable, a living ghost of a dead airline. Captain Matthews, the man who chose weakness over leadership, had been stripped of his license. The FAA investigation, spurred by Kratos's legal team, had found a pattern of crew deference that bordered on negligence. He was fighting to keep his pension. And Chad Miller, his fate was, in some ways, the most complete. Kratos had blacklisted him, and in the world of high finance, a Kratos blacklisting was a death sentence. His clients fled. His firm imploded. His wife, facing a future in a modest two-bedroom condo rather than a Hamptons estate, had filed for a very public, very acrimonious divorce. He was last spotted trying to get a job at a luxury car dealership in New Jersey. He had gone from a diamond medallion to a man who couldn't even afford the gas. They were noise. They were static. They were the friction the future had to overcome. Serafina stepped out from the tense shadow into the blinding Nevada sun. She walked up the steps to the stage, the applause thundering to life. Robert Hale, the Global Sky CEO, rushed over and embraced her. "Sarah, you look like $1 billion. Or, adjusted for what you did, $20 billion. He laughed, his voice hoarse with excitement. "It's a good day to build, Robert." She smiled. She stepped to the podium, which was made of a single piece of brushed aluminum. The crowd fell silent. She looked out at them, at the press, at the investors, and at the rows of new Kratos Apex employees, Michael Croft among them, all watching her. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying in the clear desert air. No microphone needed for the first, sharp words. 6 months ago, I was asked to leave an airplane. I was sitting in my paid-for, confirmed seat, 1A. But a member of the cabin crew, enabled by her captain, decided I was a threat. They claimed they didn't feel safe. So, security was called. I was removed. It was humiliating. It was public. And it was, for them, a routine exercise of petty power. A murmur went through the press. This was not the story they were expecting. The airline involved, she continued, was Velocity Airlines. At the time, they were our primary partner for the Global Sky Consortium. I was on that flight to sign the very deal that would guarantee them billions in contracts. The silence was now absolute. Velocity's leadership made a calculation. They calculated that the feelings of a prejudiced employee were more valuable than the dignity of a passenger. They calculated that a black woman in a tracksuit was a problem to be managed, not a customer to be served. They thought they were de-escalating a situation. But what they were really doing was signing their own death warrant. She leaned forward, her voice dropping but gaining a raw intensity. Because they had fallen victim to the single most dangerous, most toxic, and most unprofitable disease in corporate America, legacy thinking. Legacy thinking, she boomed, is the lazy, corrosive, and bankrupt belief that who you are, or where you sit, is more important than what you do. It's the sickness that values tradition over innovation. It's the entitlement that protects a long-term, incompetent employee over a high-value new customer. Legacy thinking is a flight attendant who believes her uniform gives her dominion over the person who pays her salary. It is a captain who trusts the hysteria of his crew over the calm, cold facts in front of him. And it is a corporation so bloated, so insulated by its own past success that it cannot see the $4 billion liability it has just created. She smiled, a cold, sharp expression. "Well, I am the CEO of Kratos Innovations. We are not a legacy company. When we see a liability, we do not smooth it over. We do not manage it. We divest. We cut the dead weight. We excise the cancer." So I pulled our funding, all $4 billion, and Velocity Airlines, a company that had survived wars, recessions, and 9/11, ceased to exist in under 90 days. It collapsed under the weight of its own prejudice. She pointed to the silver pod. And this is what we built from its ashes. The applause was a single, deafening roar. "That pod," she shouted over the noise, "does not care about the color of its cargo. It doesn't care about the status of its sender. It cares about one thing: speed, efficiency, merit. This is the New Horizon. This is a logistics network built not on who you know, but on how fast we can get it there. This is a $20 billion network that will render every legacy cargo airline on this continent obsolete. She held up her hand for quiet, her face set in a look of ultimate command. But we did not just build new hardware. We salvaged the best of the software. When Velocity collapsed, 10,000 people lost their jobs. Most of them were good people, trapped in a bad system. I am proud to announce that the Kratos Phoenix program has officially completed its first phase hiring. Over 3,000 former Velocity employees, the engineers, the logisticians, the pilots, the talent that their own company threw away, are now Kratos Apex employees with full benefits and their service years restored. She found Michael Croft in the crowd and locked eyes with him. We are not just launching a new train today. We are launching a new philosophy. The future doesn't have time for prejudice. The future doesn't wait for permission. The future rewards talent, and it punishes bigotry. Welcome to the New Horizon. Now, Mr. Croft, launch the pod. The crowd exploded. As Serafina stepped back, the world's press scrambled for their feeds. Michael Croft's voice, thick with emotion but steady, came over the loudspeaker. Kratos Apex 1, you are clear for launch. Full power! With a soundless whoosh and a crack of displaced air, the pod shot forward, hitting 300 miles per hour in under 10 seconds, a silver needle stitching a new line across the desert. An hour later, Serafina was in her private transport, a sleek, black, Kratos-designed electric sedan, moving silently away from the launch site. The dust of the desert was already settling. Robert Hale had just left, his face ruddy with joy, already on the phone to the consortium partners, talking about Phase 2. Anna was sitting opposite Serafina, reading from her own data slate. Dr. James, the feeds are, well, viral is an understatement. Forbes is calling your speech the new corporate doctrine. The Wall Street Journal just published a long-form apology for their article 6 months ago that suggested you overreacted, and Apex stock is up 110% in the last hour. It was just the facts, Anna, Serafina said, looking out the window. Facts are profitable. Prejudice is not. One last fact, then, Anna said, a small professional smile playing on her lips. The final liquidation report for Velocity Airlines just closed. It's the end of their fiscal story. And? Serafina asked, her focus already on the memo for her next project. All assets were sold. The planes, the gates, all picked apart by creditors. The last item on the docket was the brand itself, the Velocity Airlines name, the V logo, all associated trademarks. I assume it was worthless, Serafina murmured. Not entirely, Anna said. There was a small bidding war between two memorabilia collectors and a budget airline in Bolivia. The budget airline, Aerocondor, won. They bought the entire brand identity package. Serafina finally looked up, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. How much, Anna? Anna checked the report. $5,000. Serafina was very still. A slow, cold, and utterly magnificent smile spread across her face. She did the math in her head, a quick, effortless calculation. $5,000, she repeated, the words tasting like victory. That's 1/100th of 1% of the $4 billion. $125 for every million I pulled. She leaned back against the leather, the hum of the electric engine the only sound. It seems about right, she said, turning back to the window. A $5,000 valuation for a flight attendant's feelings, a captain's discretion, and a passenger's opinion. She picked up her data slate and opened the file for her next project. a deep-sea mining venture. The past was done. It was liquidated, sold for parts, and owned by a budget airline in Bolivia. She was already building the future, and this time there were no dinosaurs to slow her down. And that's how a $4 billion decision was made at 40,000 feet. It's a story that proves a simple, powerful truth. Respect is not optional, and karma, especially in the world of business, has a way of balancing the books. The airline thought they had all the power, but they forgot that the real power was sitting in seat 1A. When you underestimate someone based on what they look like, you're not just being a fool, you're making a catastrophic business error. What do you think? Was Serafina's response justified, or was it a ruthless overreaction? Let me know your take in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama, karma, and corporate justice, please make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story. We drop new videos every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Love you. See you next time.